Hello and welcome to the skating lesson. My name is Dave Elise.
I'm Jonathan Byer, and drum roll, please.
And we are thrilled to welcome Olympic team event gold medalist Meagan Duhamel back to the skating lesson to discuss the team event at the 2022 Olympic Games. Meagan, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thank you. I can't believe the team event's already finished. Like, I know it happened, I watched it happen, but I guess because I'm not competing in it for the first time, it almost feels like really different.
So you've been in two team events, you've been in world team trophies. You know, there's always this feeling and this question, and let's just start it out. Does this diminish the individual results? Does this, you know, what has this changed? Is it this, is the medal worth the same? And I'm wondering from your perspective, now that you have had years to reflect on it and have had, you know, the experience of competing twice, team pressure, not team pressure, what are your feelings about the team event and, you know, the significance of it?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's a great addition. I think it's great. I don't have an issue with it coming first. And I was one of those people who competed 4 times in 1 week, and I have no problem with it. Having a great team event in 2018 set us up and gave us momentum moving into the pairs competition. I don't think it devalues the medal at all. I can't say that because a lot of sports have relays and have team events, and these are very important medals. I think because in the skating community, it's still new. Some people get that sense, well, they didn't win it by themselves. That being said, I do hold my bronze medal I won in the pairs event to a higher regard, if I can say that, than the gold medal that I won with the team. They were both different experiences. They were both great experiences, but that bronze in the pairs event was what I worked my whole life for. The gold felt like a bonus. But I still, like, I was an Olympic champion, but if people ask me like, oh, what did you do in skating? Like the first thing I would say is I won an Olympic bronze medal in pairs.
Over your world titles.
Yeah, and won world titles. But if I'm talking about the Olympics, I guess. But I do think it's important. I do think other sports, they have a lot more medal opportunities than we do in skating. I almost feel like we should be giving a short, a long, and an overall medal at the Olympics like they do at Worlds. Because speed skating, swimming, track and field, they have the opportunities to win so many medals and contribute to, you know, this foundation of sport in their country and sponsors and whatever else they need. So I do think it's been a great addition to pair skating. And I think, or not pair skating, figure skating. And I think it has pushed countries to take all the disciplines seriously, because look at what Japan did. They invested in pair skating because they knew they needed one more strong discipline to have a chance for that medal.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Do you think it would help? Sorry to interrupt, Dave. Do you think it would help legitimize it if it was also a part of the World Championships? This was something Dave and I were talking about before. Because also it sort of comes out of the blue. It's just an Olympic event. World Team Trophy always, as a viewer to me, seemed so silly. It seemed like, you know, an old professional cutesy thing where we want people in funny glasses and hats. And it didn't draw me in as a viewer, but I felt if under the guise of a World Championships, they were doing the team event, I would be, I think, more inclined to take the Olympic one more seriously.
I think why we see World Team Trophy, the event that's held in Japan every 2 years, with that, like you said, a little bit more made for TV fun. Well, first of all, it was and is made for TV. That was the sole purpose of creating that event. And it's at the end of the season. So everybody's just like letting loose. And so like that energy is kind of natural at that point in the season. I did that team challenge that they had in 2016 in Spokane, and it was very similar energy to World Team Trophy. Still great skating, but not taken to the same level of seriousness as the Olympics. I think it would help the skaters if the team competition was part of Worlds, because I remember going to Pyeongchang and being like, the first time I'm ever in my life going to compete 4 times in 1 week is at the Olympics. I had no trial run for it. So I do think it would be nice for the skaters to have a trial run, maybe at every second Worlds, or maybe at every Worlds the year before the Olympics, something like that.
Yeah, I noticed that I think it's good because as someone who follows gymnastics, I'm bleeding, and who, you know, there's so many articles about team strategy and team selection. Who are they going to pick? And it adds interest and it adds noise among the fans. I've talked to more people about skating in the last 3 weeks. Who should they put up in the event? What do you think about the lineup? Do you think this is the right choice? Do you think that is the right choice? And whether or not you're used to it or you're into it, people are more into it than just talking about the same things of the same events and the same debates about the Russian ladies. Like, people are really getting into it, and I think it adds another level of interest that is beneficial to the sport. So,
and at the Olympics, people want to cheer for your country. Like, you do. You just find yourself like, I think like general Olympic fans find themselves really patriotic to their country during the Olympics. So that's why they really gravitate to that team event, because they're cheering for a country, not for an individual skater. I had somebody message me on Instagram and they were like, why are you cheering for Team Japan? And I was like, well, it's my husband's team.
And also, this
is an example of an Olympic fan that doesn't follow maybe skating all the time and understand. That they're like, you're from Canada, you're Team Canada, you should be cheering for them.
We were doing on our live shows, some people were getting angry that other people were rooting for Team Japan, but I do think it's very exciting to see it and to watch.
Team Japan's so likable. Like, all their skaters are just likable.
And are relatively considered underdogs. So it's exciting to see something new emerge that changes the conversation a little bit. And that was much needed, because when the team event first started, of course, Canada, USA, Russia, Canada, USA, Russia. Like, this becomes so much more interesting to me now, I think. What's interesting also are the Olympic only fans are now also introduced to 5 of these ladies, let's say, and that's who they think are really the 5 ladies. It's fascinating. Like, there's so much spotlight and attention now given to a Karen Chen, Beverly or Maddie Skizis, that we may not have seen otherwise, and they become such like important players in the competition. And you sort of have to tell certain people, yes, I know you didn't like that one ice dance team, please know they'll probably be 24th or something like that after they've seen them in the team event. So I think it confuses, because some people are meeting their Olympic personalities, but you almost want to be like, oh, they're not really relevant.
Yeah, wait until the actual individual event comes. Yes.
You almost just said real. Did you almost just say real event?
Well,
competition. It is. The skaters take it seriously. And that is, I think that the skating fan and the skating community need to know how seriously these skaters take this. They do not back down. Kamila didn't need to try any quads yesterday to win, like for Russia to win, but the skaters don't back down. They take this as an opportunity to create momentum for the games, set themselves up, set them apart, and try to help their country in the best way that they can. Like the Japanese team, I know that if they did not contribute to the team the way they did yesterday, they wouldn't be happy with their bronze medal. It wouldn't feel like a success if they were not a contribution to it like they were. So they took it very seriously, or the skaters do.
I learned something interesting yesterday, which I didn't know, is that, and maybe you would have more insight on this about when people find out when they're slotted to compete. But I had actually heard that in 2018, that Tessa and Scott may not have done the free dance, and that was kind of a last minute decision by Skate Canada. Yeah.
Our plan all along was to do it all. We knew that since the summer. We knew that Tessa and Scott were ready to do it all. I think I am aware that Skate Canada told Caitlin and Andrew be needed. The problem is that the names need to be submitted. Sometimes you don't know how much of a lock you are until the names are already submitted. And then it's like, oh, we could have substituted somebody in. We didn't need this team. We could have allowed somebody else to have a medal, but you don't know that. And there's a deadline for submissions, for name submissions, and it can't be changed. So in the pairs event, Vanessa and Eric's names were submitted at the deadline. They had that accident in practice. They said, we're still going to do it. If they woke up the next day and they were unable to skate, no team would skate for Canada. You cannot change the submissions after it's entered. It doesn't matter if there's an injury. It's done. Kirsten and Mike's names.
I wonder what that does.
So it's a weird rule with having to submit names in a certain time frame that makes it really hard to work the strategy because you don't know how people are going to place before Tessa and Scott are needed.
Yeah, I think it's really silly, especially when Vanessa and Eric are the substitution, right? Because Kirsten and Mike are the original pair entry. For all intents and purposes, they are slotted to do both. And then Vanessa and Eric are subbing in, right?
Yeah.
I don't understand why they couldn't sub out, because if you think about it, like there was at the Olympics in 2004, there was an American gymnast who she had a hip injury and they decided that she couldn't do the balance beam. So last minute, they had an alternate go up on there for her, but she was already on the list as an alternate. I don't understand. Like, I get that they try to make everything so official and rules, and I get that this is new, but look, we all saw the practice yesterday. We saw the fall, and I think safety of the athletes, and why punish a country for something that's potentially putting its skater at risk. That's just my opinion for it. You know, there are different.
For sure. I think there's a lot of tweaking that has to happen. I don't necessarily like the spread of points that are distributed in the free skate when there's only 5 skaters. I think that there should be a bigger difference between each placement for the points collected, because at every Olympics from Sochi to Pyeongchang to here, after the short program, things were already set. Nothing was going to change.
Right.
Or like if there was something that was going to change, it was like super unlikely within the top 3. I wish that they distributed the points a little bit differently for the free skate when there's only 5 skaters in each discipline, because that would allow some more shifting in the free skate, some more excitement for the competition. Like, it was weird to me watching the women's competition, and I was like, if I was one of these women's skaters right now, and I already knew no matter how I skate, this is what place I'm coming, that's a weird energy to go on the ice with. Super uncomfortable as an athlete. So yeah, I wish that they distributed the points a bit differently. I wish they took into concern the score that you get. If you are winning by 30 points, but you're only given one more point than the team behind you, it just doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, I would double the points in the free. I think that's a great.
Well, because it also, if you're the same person competing in both the short program and the free program, again, there's no difference between the two. Like, there's no weight difference in that even, and it should be reflected. It's harder.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, in many instances, actually, the short is more important at the
short is very important. That's why you usually, in every case, except for I'd say Japanese ladies, they use their strongest skaters in the short program, because that's where everything is decided.
Right.
So you didn't think that Canada was going to make it into the final, especially once Keegan Messing, the stalwart of Canadian men over the last several seasons, went out. What was your prediction for the top 5, and talk us through kind of what happened?
Well, I like to go by numbers. I like to go by facts. Going into the women's short program, we're looking at the numbers. Maddie Schizis has never scored higher than the Georgian girls. The girl from Georgia, I'm sorry, I forget how to pronounce her name right now. And then people are going to be like, oh, Meagan doesn't know how to pronounce names. I don't want to hear her anymore. So the women's skater from Georgia. She's been scoring 69 in the short program. Maddie at her best got 67 at Cup of Russia. So it was like, looking at the math, there could fit one more skater between Georgia and Canada, and that will take Canada out of the free skate. So, I wasn't very confident that Canada would make the free skate because of the math, but very pleasantly surprised to see Maddie Schizis skate and score what she did. I would have pushed 70 in the short program. I think she was almost there. She really had the skate of her life when she needed it the most, and she brought Canada into the free skate. And good for her. As much as I doubted if Canada could do that, I didn't want Maddie to have a bad skate. So I think that was really important. And China's like buffer that they had sitting third going into that women's short program, it didn't matter as much how their skater did, even if she had eventually come last. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised to see the results that happened between Canada and Georgia in the women's short program, and that allowed Canada to advance.
So you're a numbers person. I tend to mix numbers with like psychology and momentum. It's like usually what I look at. And when I said Maddie Schizis, I believed in, because I think we've been looking at someone that didn't have a lot of international experience, who's been getting it in a very condensed period of time since 2021 and moving forward. And I've been really impressed with how, maybe not every competition has gotten better, but overall, if you were to make a graph, she has really improved.
On an incline.
I mean, that triple Salchow has gotten better. And I saw a skater, I thought last night, who fought for every jump, who was really gritty and showed some real fight out there. And I don't know, I think that she has a very good chance at placing pretty well at the individual event. Just for that grit alone, I think that she's someone that, you know, really withstood the pressure very, very well. So I was very impressed.
I think the thing is, like, in my mind, I know that she can skate well. I know that she's a great skater. I do think that she's amazing, but you just don't know what the judges are going to do with somebody that new. I also didn't realize initially that she was skating in the second warm-up group in the women's short program, which we know makes a big difference as well. So, I mean, she ended up being the star of the whole Canadian team.
Yeah,
she produced the best results, finishing third in the short program, third in the free skate, outscoring her personal best by far. And I think beating Chen in these segments is a big thing for Maddie moving forward.
I think one of the things that hasn't been discussed a lot this season is the impact of Nebelhorn and having to like reconfirm those spots and that whole new rule that happened. Because if you look, there was a lot of conversations people were having, why isn't Alyssa Liu in the team event? And you're thinking like, wait a second, she bombed her short at nationals. She didn't compete. And if you look, she did her best early in the season and then it started to go down, right? With her triple axel and the consistency of the performance. And even Vincent Zhou, again, he did well at Nebelhorn, he did well at Skate America, and then it was starting to go down. But at the same time, when you do that well, based on how teams are selected now with body of work, you really lock in those spots earlier in the season. And I think people have a really hard time understanding, well, why was Vincent? It's like Vincent won Skate America. The Olympic Committee is going to look at that, not just the US figure skating, but the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee is going to want to send the winner of Skate America to the Olympics, you know, and he got us this spot at Nebelhorn. Like, they don't care about worlds at that point. So yeah, it's very interesting.
I think like, I mean, it's, you're guessing people's reliability sometimes when you have inconsistent skaters. You're guessing the reliability of them. You're guessing how the technical panel is going to call things. If I was working for USFSA, would Karen have been my choice for the team event? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. She delivered and she performed in the free skate yesterday. Like, she gave a performance, a great performance. Would she be, when I'm looking at all three of those girls and I'm thinking Alyssa in a short could fall on an under rotated triple axel, but still hit 68 to 72. Karen gets one under rotation and she's out of that window. How often does she get the under rotation? You know, you're looking at so many things. And then you have Mariah Bell, who is relatively consistent, but didn't have the triple in the short earlier this season, but we've seen her consistently do it in the past. So I mean, I get that was a really tough decision. Totally get it. I get the US wanting to use both their dance teams because they are both equally at a very similar level at the near or at the top of the world. Like, I get all these things. I'm just not so certain. Chen would have been my confident pick for the team event, especially after the US was leading day one.
Yeah,
I think I would have rethought some strategy after the US was leading day one. I was like, Nathan better skate this long. If anybody can compete 4 times in 1 week, Nathan can do it. He does like millions of run throughs a day in a week at home. He could do it. So when I saw that he was not the skater that they entered for the men's long, I realized that maybe they weren't taking the gold as seriously as Russia or Canada did 4 years ago. I think we might see a different strategy from the US at the next Olympic team event, after seeing kind of how this all played out after leading on day one.
Well, what was interesting is I think that the US entries, like who they were picking between, in an odd way, all kind of fill the same placement. Like, I think that a Chock and Bates and a Hubbell and Donohue were going to end up in the same place. Like, I think a Karen, a Mariah, Alyssa, I don't know that they would have been higher than 4th.
That Maddie was a big wild card into that I don't think we could have expected. And so
even with the pairs, I was curious, you know, some people were confused by the selection of Alexa over Ashley and Timothy, who had won nationals, not by any fault of Brandon or anything, but I don't know, would they not have finished in the same place anyway? It's a weird thing to go through. But.
And I mean, you're going with what you think and how you think somebody's going to skate in the moment. Yes, over the course of a couple of years, Alexa and Brandon have, or over the course of 2 seasons, Alexa and Brandon have consistently been the best team that the US has. The skate Ashley and Timothy put out, the skates, there's my lights, I got to do a little dance. The skates Ashley and Timothy put out at US Nationals, to me, were the best skates we've seen from a US pair, and maybe ever. So can they replicate it? I don't know. So they're banking on that. Can Ashley and Timothy replicate what they did at US Nationals, which could have been second in the team event yesterday? Or are you going with the overall history?
Yeah.
So it's just a really hard gamble. Like that is a hard gamble.
I thought about that a lot about Ash, because it is an Olympic medal, for the rest of your life that's at stake, and it's a very serious thing. And I was thinking about Alexa and Brandon, and the decision I would have gone with Ashley and Tim, even scores, just based on the fact of how they competed at nationals. I thought they skated with confidence and they really delivered. Granted, their biggest rivals weren't competing, but they were that trained and prepared to go out and do that. So
I do think that, I don't believe, had Ashley and Timothy skated like they did at nationals, Alexa and Brandon could have beat them on that day. I really, like, Ashley and Timothy were just in another world at nationals, like an incredible world. But when looking at the whole body of work, yeah, you would go with Alexa and Brandon. So like, I see it, I understand. Then Alexa and Brandon pulled out a 75 in the short, which is huge. So yeah, these are just such difficult decisions to make. Like, what's somebody going to do in the moment? You don't know.
Go there, Dave. Go there.
About this. Okay, Meagan. The short program of the pairs was the most hotly debated competition, and in the Russian press, it was covered just from 1 and 2. But in many other people that I've talked to in the pair world, they looked at the caller and they looked at how some of those calls were judged. The only time that Alexa and Brandon have gotten a level 4 twist is when Troy Goldstein is the caller. So he likes their split. Other people may not like their split.
Let's remember that Troy Goldstein also gave their quad twist level 4s.
He also went to her wedding. He went to Alexa's wedding. Also, just, a fact.
Troy is a great caller, but he is very strict. From my experience with him, he has very, very high standards. When I've had feedback from him and stuff, which I respect, I'd rather a really strict high standard. But yeah, I mean, in the past, he's given Alexa and Chris a level 4 quad twist. Mm-hmm. So I was not surprised to see the calls of the pairs event.
But then I've been told that the Canadians have the best death spirals in the world. And I saw the Japanese death spiral not get a level 4.
Like Kirsten and Michael?
Kirsten and Michael. I have been told, and Meagan Duhamel's
they do, yes.
Story, maybe she and Kirsten weren't even the best of friends, that Kirsten Wartowers has the best back outside death spiral in the world. And it did not get a level 4. And I was just thinking, okay, we're game on with the Olympics. You know what? This is very interesting. Okay. Yay, pair skating. It makes me count death spirals more than ever,
I think that, like I said, I do believe that when Troy is on a panel, he does set a very high standard, and you do have to respect that. He was on the panel in Sochi, and we had a death spiral entry that dislocated my shoulder. It was so difficult, and he did not view it as a difficult entry. So, and you know what? We changed it for Worlds. We made it easier. We got the level 4. It is what it is. But you know the callers. So when you go into an event and we knew Troy is on the panel, it was like, we're going to hold those death spirals 3.5 reps instead of 3. Mm-hmm. We are going to let go of these lifts a quarter of a turn early. We were aware of those things as a skater. And when somebody else was on a panel, I was like, okay, they want this. I have to be aware of this. As a skater, you kind of have those type of strategies when you see who's calling on your panel. And the really great skaters will make those adjustments. It's entirely possible that when Alexa and Brandon know he's on a panel, the adjustments that they make are very natural to them. And that leads them to having good levels when he's on a panel.
Yeah, it was funny. Did you have an opinion over 1 and 2? I personally inherently think it's interesting that I think that Sui and Han have that special intangible quality that we usually expect from a Moskvina pair. And I think that as good as Mishina and Galliamov have become over the last years with Moskvina's tutelage, I still think that they lack the inherent special je ne sais quoi like feeling that you expect. Like they're not Berezhnaya and Sikora-Litsa flowing over the ice. It's more workmanlike when they do it. And to me, I'm more partial to giving those extra points to Sui and Han if it were between them. But other judges on the panel obviously went the other way in the short program.
I mean, and I am a big fan of Mishina and Galliamov. I think that
Galliamov. Yeah.
Galliamov. Somebody corrected me like 5 times after the last time I was on the show. I'm a big fan of them and I love them. And I've been a big fan of Sui and Han since they were like 11 years old and beating Eric. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of both teams. But I was very surprised to see it as close after the short coming into the Olympics. And I know Bruno's even talked to Tamara Moskvina and been like, you know, your team's going to be behind in the short when you get to the Olympics. Their key to winning is their long program. Tamara knows it. The skaters know it. So when I read that the Russians were a little bit disappointed with their score, I was like, oh, if I was like that close to Sui and Han after the short and I was them, I'd be so happy. That Sui and Han don't have a buffer on me going to the free skate. The free skate's my strength. Like I feel like it would have made me feel really confident. When they finished, I was like, oh, this is going to make the Russians feel good. There's no difference. They're both just very different teams. Mm-hmm. Mishina and Galliamov will have greater GOEs on their twists, their jumps, and their throws. Their side-by-side jump is slightly more difficult in base value. They're going to rack up a lot more GOE points than the Chinese will on those elements. And on the lift maybe too. Sui and Han will have the finer details of their choreography and their program component, like all of the program components. So, I mean, it's apples to oranges of 2 really great teams. I don't have a problem when they both skate well. Whoever comes out on top will come out on top. I think it's too close to know. But I really don't have a problem. I think the Russians' performance quality and personality when they skate, their showmanship, it's second to none. I don't think that the Chinese have that as their strength. They have more the nuances of the choreography. That being said, I don't think this is the Chinese best short program they've ever had. I think that they've had some better pieces of choreography. After their side-by-side jump and their throw, or maybe it's just their throw. There's one moment of their program where they get really far apart for quite a long time. I feel like they're just better than that. They don't need that. But yeah, I mean, if I was the Russians and pretty much in a tie after the short with the Chinese, that would make me feel pretty confident going into my long program.
Well, I definitely think without
their disappointment was a little confusing to me.
I definitely think without a Grand Prix final, everyone is becoming a little bit more in their national bubble, right? And including the media, and Mishina and Galliamov have been winning and they haven't seen the Chinese head to head. So that's part of this, right? There's been no expectation of, oh, we might lose this. People have almost forgotten about Sui and Han because they haven't gone head to head.
And they haven't been scoring that high this season, Sui and Han. We have to remember that Mishina's skate yesterday was the same score in the free skate with a poor major error to what the Chinese scored when they skated really well in the Grand Prix. 145. Like that's
it's interesting that you say you.
No, sorry, I was just going to say just something being said that I really realized yesterday in the free skate of the Russians. They need an audience. They're the type of skaters, and that's the type of their performance quality and their showmanship, which I believe is second to none, really thrives with the audience. So I think their biggest challenge going into the pairs event is going to be able to find a way to create that without the audience, because they were not able to do that yesterday.
Yeah, but I have to say that's why I really enjoyed the Sui and Han short program. So it's interesting. Now, I am not looking for things like how much space they have in that kind of moment, but the music was so sharp. And to me, every mood created by the music was reflected in the program in sort of sophisticated ways that were really unique to me. But yes, I view the Russians as more swagger maybe than stuff. And without an audience, who are you swaggering to? It would be very, very difficult. But some of the Russian music, that it's so plodding and so heavy that at some point in the program, I have that moment where I'm like, is this over yet? Not because I'm disliking it. It just seems like it's going on for too long. Where the sway and hand programs tend to go by quickly for me as a viewer. So I just have a bit more excitement to it. But speaking of Mishina and Galliamov, though, he's been mentioning that it was too early, that something about the timing of the event threw them, which I have a feeling is not a Meagan Duhamel endorsed excuse.
And I love this team. I love them.
Yeah.
And I love Shui and Han too. Like they are two very different teams. I do gravitate naturally a little bit more to the athleticism of the Russian team. And that's fine. That's just my personal preference. But if either of them win, I'll be very happy. But I do, the schedule of the Olympics long in advance. We knew in Pyeongchang, you're competing at 8:30 in the morning. So we made sure to do those long program runs before 9 o'clock every morning. That's part of being an athlete and strategizing and preparing. There was a practice session before the free skate. I don't know if everybody went. The Japanese were on the ice at 6 o'clock in the morning yesterday. Bruno was on a bus at 4:30 in the morning to get to that rink to do an hour warm up before the session. I'm sure they didn't love it either. Nobody would really like to get their body moving at that time, but they've known that they have to compete at this hour. So it was their job to train at this hour and train long programs at this hour. So I do get that being a challenge, but it's not something that was just thrown at them yesterday. They knew in advance.
And I would imagine, like, if I go sing in Asia or something like that, and we have an early rehearsal the next morning, it's not even that it's early, like there is no sense of time with those sorts of time changes, and you're so discombobulated. So if you're going to an event in a different time zone that requires these sort of strange hours, how do you wake up and go to bed at unconventional times? Like when I'm doing an opera, I'll take a sleeping pill. I'll wake up and over caffeinate, but I didn't know if as a skater, that could mess up sort of being in your body if you're suddenly over caffeinating and doing all these things to try to jumpstart.
I mean, people adjust in different ways. I always had a hard time going to Asia from North America and competing at night. I would be so like at 4 o'clock at night, I was ready for bed. And then I'd be like, how am I going to do it long in 4 hours or 3 hours? That was really, really tough for me. Luckily in Paris, we usually competed earlier in the day because we were the first event. You just have to go with the punches. Like there were times where I went to Asia, I competed a long program or a short program after 3 hours of sleep. That's just what it was. I would over caffeinate probably as well. Do a little bit of an extra warm up beforehand. Instead of a 1 hour off ice warm up, I'd probably do an hour and a half. You make adjustments. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But in this case, you knew the schedule coming in. So you know what? Yeah, it's tough to get up at that hour. It's tough to get your body moving, but you should have been preparing for that. At home, you should have been getting up at 5 o'clock, going on a warm up at 6:30 or 7, and then doing a free skate, because that's what's going to happen when you're at the Olympics, at least in the team event. Now shifting over to the pairs competition, they're going to be competing later in the day. So it's going to be a different reality now. The other day, Bruno was on a practice, not the day of the free skate. I believe it was the day before. And there's a lot of options for practices at the Olympics because you can do the team event practice or the individual event practice. And there's usually 2 of each. So you can be choosing from 3 or 4 practices. Which ones do I want to do? And Bruno was on the really early morning practice with Riku and Ryuichi, and he texted me, no one's here. This makes no sense. We compete tomorrow at this time. Why is nobody on the practice today at this time?
Emulating the experience.
And I was like, not many people strategize like we do, I guess. But yeah, that was the day before the free skate. And he said that there was only like 2 teams on the practice as opposed to the 4. He said everybody's choosing the later practice, which might be more comfortable for them today, but it's not realistic to what's happening tomorrow.
Well, I have to say, I really enjoy that Peacock in the US is allowing us to watch the practices.
I didn't know.
Yeah, and I've always loved that. It's why I would go to events early so that we could even put it on, because it's what people really want to watch. I love to watch the consistency, the psychology of people, how they're looking from day to day. And it's really interesting. A couple practice notes. The night before, Alexa and Brandon, the jumps that they missed in the free skate, they did them fine the day before. Or maybe like a little lost balance, maybe like base, or maybe -1 to +1 for some judges, but it was fine. That they looked good the night before. They didn't do a full long, but they did, their elements. I have a couple quick questions for you technically. What's your opinion on the Anastasia Mishina Euler? This is a hotly debate. Some people think it's really something that should be called in the future, or maybe downgraded, or Leslie Jones even picked up that there's something strange.
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little wild and out of control, but when they land, their body weight is over their skating foot. So that's what allows it to continue to count as a combo. And the Euler can only be called clean or downgraded. They're in between an under rotation and a downgrade. Like they're bordering the downgrade. It's for sure under, bordering a downgrade. Sometimes it's downgraded. So yeah, it's a tough call. It's something I would be watching all the time. It kind of makes the combo more exciting, because when they're like wild on the Euler, I'm like, oh, what's gonna happen? And then they always do a nice triple sow after, and I'm like, how do they do it? So it keeps me on the seat of my chair, like I'm excited that it ends up being so controlled after being so out of control.
The Galliamov pants, are they a yay or a nay for you?
I mean, I don't really love them, but I don't really give that much value to costumes. I liked their old free skate costume better. I don't like these new ones. I thought their previous free skate costume was so classy and so beautiful. And Bruno at one event was with Mishina, and I text Bruno how much I like their costumes, and he told me that he told her, and Tamara was like, oh, really? You think? She was already questioning if they were the right costumes for the Olympics. And I was like, tell her that they have to keep them. I love them. But I guess she didn't value my opinion that much.
How about that crash? So it was very interesting, is they had what looked to viewers, and it's so hard because on Peacock, when we should be watching the replays, they go to this like planned commercial break, and it's always like right when you want to like really see, did their heads both hit on the crash? What happened? So when we saw it in real time, the crash looked very startling at the end of their lift. It looked quite bad, but then they got up. No one was looking at their heads, and it's hard because as obviously an athlete's disappointed, they're shocked at what happened, but there's different interpretations on whether or not he looked concussed or he just looked, shocked that it happened.
Apparently sleepy. Yeah.
I mean, he looked off already. He didn't look that much more off to me after the lift fall. Going into the side-by-side triple toes already, I was like, oh, what's wrong with them? They don't look comfortable today. And that was early in the free skate. So I know when they fell, Dave texted me and was like, excuse me, concussion protocol, their doctor didn't check their heads.
Well, the doctor was my first reaction doing the wave, Dr. Shabbat is here.
They look fine. Like as a skater, I wouldn't have wanted to be checked for a concussion protocol, because they got up, they didn't even for a second hesitate. But I do understand the safety side. Like, I'm not ignoring that at all.
To me, it was the optics.
But I know that sometimes in skating,
why is the creepy doctor in the kiss and cry? Why is he there? What is he doing if not there to check for a concussion in a moment like that? Isn't that literally the moment why he's at the freaking Olympics? That was my opinion. Unless he's there for something else.
I'm not too sure that's his purpose there.
I don't know what his purpose is.
I rewatched the fall today because it's so funny. I'm trying to teach a pair team a similar exit to their lift that I did in shows where I went upside down like that. And so I was asking them, oh, did you see what happened? Does that scare you from wanting to try this exit? Are you still okay to work on it? And we rewatched it. And when I rewatch it, at least in normal speed, I don't see a large impact to their head. It appears really scary and really startling. But when I rewatch it, it's just like a little oopsie thing.
It was happens. The camera angle.
Yeah.
In the live feed for us, it had just covered. So it looked like two people hit their heads. And then when I rewatched it this morning, also, and the camera was from a slightly different angle, and you clearly see that it was not their heads, more their sides that just kind of.
There's so many times in pair skating from myself or from watching other people that I'm like, oh my God, don't get up, you're hurt. And there's nothing wrong. There's sometimes a really bad illusion to some things. I remember at Skate Canada in 2016, I had fell really bad on a throw quad sow. And I had a sports doctor that was going to repair my meniscus the next, like 2 days later. And I was like, I don't think my meniscus is torn. I skated the rest of my program. It hurts, but it's not that bad. And I rewatched the video and I'm like, oh, that video looks bad, but I don't feel it as bad as it looks. And the doctor just wanted to do the surgery without an MRI. And I was like, let's do the MRI. I don't feel that bad. And the MRI showed nothing was wrong. So even like a medical professional was certain that more had happened in that moment. So I think that, yeah, sometimes pair skating does give that illusion that it's just a lot more terrifying. Like I've seen people fall on throws and I'm like, no, don't keep going. And they're like, I'm perfectly fine. And they go around and land a triple toe or land the next throw with no problem. So it's really hard to know. It's really hard to know.
What about something like the Vanessa collision then, where you see that kind of impact?
Yeah, like that depends. Like, first of all, what part of your body was impacted? For sure, it's going to knock the wind out of you and scare you. I've never like kind of had a body check like that before. I've never been on a practice session where I've seen it. I commented on something, you guys had posted it. And somebody said, well, this is so common. And I commented, well, it's not that common. I skated with Eric for 8 years. We never collided with somebody.
Not that kind of collision.
No, and I practiced with 7 teams on the ice for years, ranging from novice to us as world champions. And no one ever had accidents like that. So I'm like, no, it's not that common. So people that think this is just a normal thing, it's really not. It's really not. I think that it really does shake you up and scares you. Like it scares you because then you're like, oh no, something's wrong. But then once you have time to like kind of calm down, take a breath, sit back, you realize it was more the startling effect of it that scared you, not something that's actually wrong that scared you. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely looked startled. I think all 4.
It looked terrifying.
I think that they've had some near misses. Obviously, there's a lot of nerves at the Olympics too with these practices. I mean, near collisions happen in practice all the time, or someone's not looking.
Teams have had some near collisions this week alone.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I had heard, and you could say Vanessa and Morgan. Now, this is Morgan, the guy leads the tracking, right? Is that was a situation where they were not a team that people enjoyed practicing with or sharing the ice with in warmups. But I've also heard that Sui and Han are also not everyone's favorite, just to practice.
There are a few skaters that you're very aware of in that regard. Vanessa and Morgan were one of them. And I do believe there's a valid reason is that they didn't train with a bunch of other pair teams. I do like, this is very valid. Eric and I trained with, like, sometimes there'd be 7 teams on our ice. Like, that's dangerous. It shouldn't have happened. And it used to drive me crazy because I'd be so worried. 7 teams was way too many pairs. But when you're skating with a lot of teams on a regular basis, you're very comfortable with that negotiation of patterns. Oh, somebody's going to their twist. Let's follow them. There's space. Let's go around the same circle. I always did find that Vanessa and Morgan were often in people's way, but I don't think it was something they did on purpose. I think they just didn't train with a lot of teams at their rink. When they trained, maybe they were one other team on the ice or them alone. So of course it's going to be different. So if I never felt like they were out to get me if they were in my way. It was just like, they're not used to having other bodies on the ice. That was my impression of it. So it wasn't anything like malicious, I didn't find. And the Chinese were other teams that I found were often in our way. For me, it was a more Zhang that was just always crossing my path. Again, I think that they're just like on their one-way track. How fast can I go into this throw? They're in their own world. I don't think that they were trying to do it.
The idea that it's malicious, I mean, that person is.
No, I never found that.
Oh, no. You know, like that's.
I specifically, like, skaters adjust. I remember one practice in Pyeongchang being on a practice session with Ryuichi and his former partner Mew, and they were doing their long program. So for 4.5 minutes, Eric and I kept wanting to do our throw quad, and we'd set it up around the circle. And every time we got to the throw quad, for some reason, Ryuichi was passing us. And so, like, we had to keep stopping. Then we'd set it up again and we'd stop because it was Ryuichi's program. It's not our place. And sometimes Ryuichi stopped because he was blocking an element. It's still his program. Even if he was standing there doing nothing, he has the right of way of where he's going next. And I mean, it drove me crazy for 4.5 minutes to like, are they in my way? Are they out of my way? But it's just what you have to do. It's just what you do. And when we did a program or when somebody else is doing the program, then that's their priority.
Yeah. It's a lot of young kids today they don't have the same protocols where they learn on the rink. It's just very interesting that the younger kids today don't have that same.
I think in pair skating and in dance, maybe more in pair skating, we really do follow that protocol. I've had 3 different partners. I've talked to other skaters. Sometimes before a 6-minute warm up, the skaters say, hey, I'm going to the far end and I'm going to do my stroking pattern down there. Then we would say, okay, we'll stay at this end. We'll give you space. It's just what you do. It's common courtesy. So everybody has the space to do what they need. And when somebody's having their music, even if it's your biggest rival, you always stay out of their way.
Yeah, that was the whole, remember Mariah Bell and Unsu, that whole situation at Worlds during a run through, but yes.
And it doesn't matter if they're talking to their coach during their run through, or they're standing there blocking a spin or blocking a lift or blocking a jump, it's their run through.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is the only time your music gets to be played. So there is.
And you don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we'd be like, oh, we'll go around after their lift. When they go into the throw, and then after their lift, they stop and we're like, oh, darn it, we missed that. We can't go. So it is what it is.
And I think too, that some fans sometimes don't understand is that when someone is doing their music and it's the one time it's going to play that day at a competition, that is in your head. You know, there's everything else and there's the run through that counts. And it's a added level of emotion and focus and
yeah, high pressure.
So I want to know what else. Unfortunately, we did get confirmation that Vincent Zhou is out of the individual event. Heartbreaking for him to get all the way here. And I have a couple of feelings about the Olympics in general, and then we can go on to, his experience in COVID. But you having competed in an Olympics, right? And more than one Olympics, when you're watching it on TV, for me, as someone that loves, skating, and obviously, I feel for the athletes that they have worked their entire lives to get to this moment. And obviously, if you postpone, and a year is a long time to wait, but to go and have no crowd in an Olympics, when we talk about how the program of Mishina Galliamov wasn't as effective, to me, it felt like a vacuum in that, especially the first night of the team event, it felt like there was just no energy.
It was a practice.
It didn't feel like the Olympic Games. What is your take on it? Is this the right thing to be doing? Is this the wrong thing to be doing? I do feel for the athletes that my Olympics was the COVID Olympics. Like I feel for them in general, anyone that was there.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to have like a damper effect, I think, in some ways on people's Olympic experience. Mm-hmm. You can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. Nobody's there personally to support you, like of your family and friends or outside, like your skating circle or your sports circle. I do feel like that's a little bit of a damper. That being said, the skaters have competed without an audience a couple of times now. There's been occasions where you have to create your own fake audience or your own energy or your own audience. So it's something that skaters could and should have been aware of in their preparation. Like, where can we create the energy without relying on the audience to create the energy? Obviously, it adds another layer to your training and your skating, but it is what it is right now. I kind of had like 2 different experiences with audiences at the Olympics. When I was in Sochi at the Olympics, I didn't feel like I had much of an audience.
You didn't?
The audience was chanting Russia the whole warm up, Russia, for 6 minutes, which terrified me. I was like, did I just step on the ice in like the middle of a hockey game? I'd never heard something like that.
The Chinese crowd does that too when they yell "Jia Yo." It can be very alarming if you're not used to it. It's
aggressive,
Very aggressive, very loud, very deliberate. Not to you, like it was like, well, this audience isn't cheering for me, that's for sure. Whereas then you went to a more neutral audience in Korea that wasn't as big. The audience in Sochi was very big, very full. The arena had a lot of empty seats in Pyeongchang, but very neutral. You had the support of your like little section of friends and family and whoever had come there. But like, I tried to imagine, I was like, okay, if I was going to like the COVID Olympics or like the Olympics in this time, and I wasn't getting to experience all the hoopla of the Olympics. I mean, I think like the really best athletes are there to do their job. And like, I'm just here to do my job, do this, skate my best, place my best. That the whole hoopla circus of the Olympics that might not be there right now won't affect them that much. It'll affect different people in different ways, but This isn't the first time that the skaters have had to compete without an audience. So the first time will be like awkward and uncomfortable, and then you go home and make the adjustments.
To me, this the team event, and the whole purpose of a team event is for TV, but the audience obviously interacts. The audience to those boxes, to Scott Moyer and Meagan being like the cheerleaders of Canada, you know, and that energy is so infectious. It does feel strange to have it.
But the energy is only infectious like that in a team event. Like you don't have your teammates in a box screaming for you the whole time when you're in an individual event. That's what makes a team event really unique, and can give extra pressure or that extra oomph of energy. So they got a little bit more of that in the team event than anybody's going to get in their individual event.
For whatever reason, I find that I often don't rewatch maybe I don't rewatch many performances in general, but I don't rewatch many that don't have an audience. I mean, the audience is a crucial part of.
Well, because Dave, think about it. Like, why do we go back? Why do I go back to certain performances in the 90s? It is often either the energy that the audience or the commentators, quite frankly, have created for me, but it's also an emotional moment that the skater is having to me. I'm not going to go back and remember this clinically correct rotated moment, but I am going to remember someone leaving their heart on the ice, and it's easier to do that with an audience. So
the audience carries you through at one point in your skate.
They're less emotional skates thus far. We've seen moments of emotional release at the end of moments when people seem relieved or stressed out or whatever it is. But, and we'll talk about this with Valieva also. NBC, anyway, is pushing this huge narrative, the biggest star ever, and non-skating fans are really getting behind it. They're like, oh, wow, I'm watching that Russian girl. You must love her. And it's like, well, it's really interesting. I really respect someone like Valieva. How incredible that she's doing all of those jumps with all of those transitions. Yet, if I'm being honest, I'm never going to go back and watch one because she doesn't grip me and share her soul and have this big emotional moment. Whereas like Wakaba skating around with a smile on her, you know, ear to ear, just living her best life in that short program just engages me more, even without the audience. So I don't know, but maybe as North Americans, we go for more emotional performances. I don't know.
The audience like getting behind you just gives this extra push for you to start delivering emotionally. Like if I think about some of our best performances, like Worlds in Boston, that audience was insane. And like halfway through the program, you're just like going with them because they're going wild too. It does add another layer of emotional depth.
Yeah.
But I do believe people can find that within themselves. It might not be the same magic, but I do believe that, you know, some of the best performers can find that in their performances. Like, I mean, this is a little bit of a different level than Kamila, obviously, but Maddie Skeezes, I never saw her perform with such emotion as she did in the team event. And that was with no major audience there for her. She found that within herself in her own performance level. So, you know, it's a big test for a lot of skaters, and we'll really see different sides to the character of those skaters because of it.
Yeah.
Now, the commentary doesn't offend me. I mean, I don't particularly like NBC's style of commentary with Tara and Johnny because it's different than what we grew up with. When we grew up with skating in the 90s, the directors had a theory about broadcasting and also storytelling. And I find that Tara and Johnny don't really do either. They kind of have their own style, a mix, which is more of like a viewer where they're commentating or they're making jokes, but it doesn't like build the performance often, you know, and Johnny sometimes will try to do it, but, you know, we were rewatching Elvis Stoico and the 94 Olympics, and Scott Hamilton goes, and this next jump could be the gold medal.
Scott was the best though. Like Scott and Sandra, like you can't compare any commentator now.
Well, and Sandra's told me that they were trained to find moments in the program, in the music, when it was quieter to build that. And that was a strategy of the director. That was just that director's, David Michaels' style. And some people like it, some people don't. Some people are very offended that during Sally and Peltier, Scott said, and this, you know, the triple loop could be, you know, the gold medal. And some people, you know, take that. But I do think that it adds something for rewatching and for storytelling perspective that's very effective. If you want to talk about, yes, did that influence how millions of people viewed the event and the result? Absolutely, it does. You know, but that
was a commentator though.
Yeah, it's the job of a commentator, and that's why they're paid to do that. So I do agree, but
that's funny because I've been told to have, like, there's moments where I'm doing the commentary, and it's very different doing the commentary on the stream with Ted Barton and his team, where we don't talk during a performance, and then needing to go on TV and you need to talk because after it's a commercial break and you don't get to talk after. It's a very fine line. It's very difficult going from one to the other, I'm finding. But there are times where the program's going and then I'm like, do I talk or do I not? And Kurt's standing next to me and he's going, let the moment live. And I'm like, okay, I'll let it live. But then I'm like, where do I pick it back up again?
Right.
And then Kurt would give me a nudge, like start talking again. Or vice versa, I talk too much and he's telling me not to. But it's a very fine line of letting the emotional performance breathe, but also bringing the audience into how important that moment is.
But what you do, Meagan, is you are modeling critical thinking for the viewer, as opposed to Johnny and Tara just say, wow, her outfit's fabulous. And it was like, I don't need your commentary for that. I see the outfit, I hear the music. If you just tell me these sort of generic things that don't require an expert, I don't know why you're sharing it. If you're talking to the audience about levels, or if Sandra is explaining why one program speaks to her and another may not, it sort of leaves us learning more about the sport, because so many that view the Olympics right now really don't. They don't know the scoring has changed. They don't know what, so they're just gonna believe whatever they're told. And I just think it's a lack of faith in the sport on NBC's part to think that they have to sugarcoat it and make it more bubblegum, instead of sort of raw technical information that informs a casual viewer how to look at it.
Which Candace does so well whenever she's used for her little clips. I watched NBC for day 2 because Canadian CBC coverage was going to be delayed by 2.5 hours. So like the events were already going to be done by the time CBC showed it on TV. So I was watching on NBC, and like Tanith is so good when she comes with her bits of information. And it is a bit of a shame to the viewers at home that NBC isn't prioritizing like the depth of knowledge and educating their audience in a way that they could if they hired particular experts for disciplines. I think that they just like the personality. Right now, they're leaning more towards the personality of their commentators, not to the knowledge and depth that they're going to bring to the viewers. And I think there's an important place for both of those things.
Well, I think you have to look at what NBC does. Tanith has really studied commentary, and I've talked to her about it. But she also commentates beach volleyball, so she's trying to get better as a commentator. Tara and Johnny are cultivated as personalities. They're not. They're cultivated as like entertainment people. You'll see them on Project Runway. You'll see them at the dog show. You'll see them at the Super Bowl. They're always in elaborate, wardrobe. And it's like personalities who are watching the skating, and you're watching it with them. That's a choice that NBC has made that. Maybe as a sports viewer, I don't like that as much, because to me, it takes away from the gravitas. Other people love them. Like I'll get people, texts from family members. Some love them, some hate them. And I always just kind of go, when someone asks me, oh, what do you think of Tara and Johnny? I'll let them lead. I'll be like, oh, they're great. Like I'll just like, let it lead and let it land, and see what they think. And then I don't want to be the Debbie Downers, but
You need a place for both. You need a place for somebody to educate, somebody to dive deep into what's happening on a skating technical level. And then you do need the energy of a personality.
But that's why it worked in Sochi, because they became so popular because they were the alternative. They were on the Olympic channel that was showing things live, and then they were still using Scott and Sandra for the primetime stuff when it would re-air. So it gave you the choice. But Dave, I don't know if you remember when we did the team recap in 2014, you had the best analogy for Tara and Johnny, because it was this, what was that show it was so funny, Mystery Science Theater, where it's just sort of live commenting and silly ways on what was happening instead of in-depth analysis, I guess.
Well, I will say is that America, like other countries, is extremely nationalistic when we watch the Olympics. So what they're doing with the Russians is actually extremely effective. And I could tell it by the text messages I'm getting. I got a text from my friend Denise, who won Jeopardy. She's a very intelligent person. And she goes, that Valieva is incredible to watch, makes all the rest look like the freshman team. But let's be honest, US, one of the conversations we're getting with people within is, does the US really have a lady who can even finish in the top 10? So NBC has paid over $1 billion for these Olympic Games. Ratings are down by 43%. That's a huge problem. Ratings in the summer were also down. So that's their ad revenue. That's how profitable the Olympics is. NBC funds a large.
That's interesting because I believe that Canada's numbers for the Tokyo Olympics were up quite high compared to past Olympics.
Really?
I believe, like, don't quote me, but I thought I heard that and was surprised.
You have to wonder, like,
because everybody was at home. I don't know, but yeah, they were like, yeah, our numbers were good during Tokyo. I don't know about right now.
You have to wonder,
but yeah,
like,
it's funny how
competed,
are so close to each other.
You know, are the nights that Simone was competing, was that bigger? We didn't have a Michael Phelps star. All of this stuff plays in. So they need to build a star. And Kamila is that star of ladies skating right now. It's the marquee event for NBC and they're going with it. So I understand that.
But it's interesting also, sorry to interrupt, Dave, this Olympics, more than others, has been exclusively streamed for me, exclusively on my computer as opposed to my television. So even when we were talking about Sochi, I still had cable. I still went to the channels. And I think a lot of skating fans now, certainly of my age and younger, are streaming it through apps on the phones, are just watching. So also I feel I'm missing out a little bit on the Olympic experience because I'm exclusively going to Peacock, hitting the figure skating button and watching the skating event. I don't get it in a positive way, but like mixed in with moguls. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I forget sometimes that the Olympics are happening because I'm just in a skating event mode.
So yesterday I was trying to find the television network to watch because watching it on your big screen TV is a lot more pleasant than watching it on a small screen. And I put it to CBC and it was on curling. And I was like, well, the pairs are starting now. Why is it on curling? My info box is saying curling and team event figure skating. But I was like, when are they going to start the team event figure skating? It became really confusing. So I turned on my computer. Well, I went to NBC. They weren't showing it at that moment either. So I went on my computer, opened it up, got the stream going, and then CBC picked it up as the first skaters were going on. They didn't do like a pre-event chat or anything like that. So like I think about somebody like, and my mom was like, well, how is like trying to talk to my grandma and explain to her when skating was coming. She's like, well, how do I know when to tell her? She's just going to sit there and watch curling for an hour and hope skating comes on. With the stream, you can just find it immediately and it does change your viewing.
Yeah, because for instance, I don't think the NBC live coverage, as opposed to Peacock, even showed Eric and Vanessa.
They didn't know.
Just
but in day two, they showed everybody, all 10 women's short programs I watched on NBC because it was shown so delayed on Canada's feed. So yeah, it's, you know, like they're prioritizing different sports and different events. You have a medal favorite, you've got to go to them instead of going to the 10th place pair team or whatever it is, you know. I get it. It's just, it does get confusing. And I haven't watched the Winter Olympics on TV in a couple of quadrennials. So I forgot that it's like that.
I do feel like we miss the other sports, just watching the skating and doing the shows for that. And I do miss that. Let's talk about the men. A couple highlights. Shoma Uno, I think, looks the best he's ever looked in his career. If you watch him in practice, he is the most focused and consistent he has ever been. I think it's really interesting going in. Obviously, with Vincent out, what's your pick for the podium in the men's? It looks like it'll be Nathan if he delivers and 2 Japanese men, but if Nathan has any mistakes, it's a very interesting podium. And what do you make of Yuzuru Hanyu in this quad axel?
I mean, with how strong Shoma and Yuma look right now, could Yuzu be the man on the outside looking in?
I think it's very possible.
Yes. Yeah.
If that quad axel goes by.
Well, I saw video practice clips of the practice session yesterday, and he tried about 6 quad axles, and every one of them is still downgraded. He's really wasting a jump box that could become a very valuable jump box. So yeah, that's a little bit worrisome to me. This quad axle that I'm all for pushing the sport. Like I'm not against it. Like I'm all for it. Try it, but to dedicate time and a jump box to something that's literally not close to being under rotated, let alone clean. It's downgraded every time. I just don't quite understand.
Well, so you have a skater who's been told he's Superman, you know?
But has he ever landed in like, it's so interesting because for all these other skaters, they always immediately will post, like to Mishina, when it was like, here's my quad sow and my quad toe. And Rika was posting her quad toe and quad sow, even though it wasn't ready for competition. So it blows my mind to go into a competition and not only not be ready for it, to maybe hope that this is the one time you can ever do it.
I mean, it's not even close in practice. So it's hard to imagine him ever having rotated one clean, let alone standing up. I admire the challenge. I admire it. I'm all for it. I'm all for pushing the envelope and pushing yourself. He's pushing himself by trying this. I get it. But to put that in your long program and to take a jump box that's going to get maybe 4 points, maybe less, when you could be using a 12-point element in that box.
When you have a gorgeous quad loop at your disposal.
That could be really detrimental at the end of the day. And then you just mentioned something about Vincent, who I mean, I feel terrible for him that this has happened at his Olympics. Like, you don't want that to happen to anybody. I don't see how he would have factored into the medals. He was skating so early in that short program, watching Shoma and Yuma and Nathan in the team event. I don't see him having been part of the conversation. So to me, the medal contenders don't change.
Well, I want to just put an analogy here for the quad axel and what I think could be going on. I'm not saying it is, but you have someone that's been built up as larger than life in a country, right? And around the world, he has had, he skates and poos have rained from the sky. That's a big boost and to anyone's confidence and also a ton of pressure, right? He's dealing with that duality as he goes along. Then it becomes to a point where it almost seems like, because Nathan got the Lutz and the flip, and he has the sow and the toe, that there has been a change where he almost can't beat Nathan because of the way the points are displayed out. The judges are, the way the components go as well. Is this a situation where someone feels like they need to make history, they need to do something larger than life, either get that third gold medal or make history? And it also is giving him an out, because if he does not win, he could have said, well, at least I went for history in this event. And does it take some of the pressure off of having, I mean, let's say that you and Stobova were neck and neck for like 12 years and she was going to win that gold medal and you did not have the points to do it. Would you go for the throw quad Lutz in that moment?
Maybe.
But you would have decided, I feel, based on how it was going in practice. And
I mean, I would never go for something in competition that I can't land. The reason we went for a quad sow at every competition, because a day never passed that we didn't land a clean one. Never. We landed a clean one every day. So it wasn't this Hail Mary type of thing, but we did see skaters like Aliona. I remember the 2013 Worlds. We had beat them like very surprisingly in the short, and in the free skate, her and Robin go for the throw triple axel as the last element of the free skate and land it. And Robin got off the ice and he was like, "We've never done that before. She's never landed that." So like he told Eric, like, she wanted to do it, but we've never done it. That's the best we've ever done. Somebody like her really thrived in that Hail Mary moment and did it. Right. Not something I'd be comfortable with as an athlete.
Well, until it went awry in Sochi, because it was the same thing.
Yeah.
We sort of think now we can just pull this out, but I would need the numbers in order for me to settle and be able to perform.
I would as well, and the people around me wouldn't allow me to do that without the numbers. I think that there are ways that Yuzu may have been able to catch Nathan without a quad Lutz, quad flip, or a quad axel.
I agree.
I think he could have worked on some really cool combos. Like that would have been so, he can do a triple axel quad toe combo. That would have been an amazing thing in the bonus points of your long program. He could have gone the route of crazy creative choreography and character and theme to his program and milked those 10s for all they're worth. I feel like there's other ways he could have maybe gone about challenging Nathan without the difficult jumps. This is the way that maybe he's gone about doing it, which that's what he feels is right, is fine. We don't have to understand why everybody does everything.
I do think that that's the components and how they're judged and needing to recalibrate a bit. I do think that Nathan is a wonderful athlete and skater. I don't think he has the most creative programs. And when you watch someone like Kolyada or Shoma Uno, you think, oh, they have a buffer that is their strength, where they are the best. Where I think Yuzu's strength is his quality of the GOE, either triple axel or quad sow or quad toe. That's the best in the world. Nathan, I think, is the best at doing the difficult elements. Maybe not the ride out is not the best, but I think his mental toughness and his ability to do that is his strength. I do think that the way that they've judged it, I can understand why people may feel boxed, or maybe his components are a little bit high, but they're going to be based on the performance and what he's doing. But I think that that's a much larger conversation with ISU. But I actually don't know that Yuzu is the skater most hurt by someone like Nathan getting high components. Maybe someone like a Koyoda or Shoma or Jason Brown, they lose some of their advantage in what they could do.
I'm intrigued by Mark, because so this was a guy, talk about performance energy. It's almost exclusively that, perhaps. And he really is skating to save his life every time. I was intrigued, Meagan, if you had any thoughts on his air position. It's one of the most unconventional looking things I see, and yet he lands them. Like, kind of the arms are a little all over the place, but yet who am I to say? Because we always said Koyoda has the most gorgeous jump technique, but if you don't land the jump, what's the point of the technique? Mark lands them, but I don't know how it's physically possible.
It's a little bit around, like, it's almost like he's moving in the air, and we see it from time to time with skaters. Like, he stands out to me because he's like an unorthodox Russian skater. Like, he doesn't skate like a traditional classical Russian skater. It's a little bit unorthodox. It's a little bit wild. And I like it because it feels fresh. Like, it feels like something fresh within Russian men.
He's more.
I don't think he's going to be a factor into a podium, but I definitely think he has the opportunity to break a top 5. He's going to have created a nice momentum for him after these great performances in the team event. I do think he's somebody that I felt like for a couple of years the Russian Federation was ignoring. I was like, why are they not sending him to big events? He's so great. He's so good. He keeps showing up at Cup of Russia and doing well. Why is he not getting selected to big events? So it's nice to see him now have these opportunities and seize. It's one thing to have the opportunity, but he's seizing the opportunity. And that's really, really nice to see.
Yeah.
Roman, he hasn't gotten those same opportunities. Roman Sadovsky came here, did not seize the opportunity. What do you think this means for him going forward? He's someone that, didn't get to go to a world championships before, and now, having this, really bad experience. Do you think this is something, knowing him, maybe, I don't know how well you know him, if you think he'll rebound for the individual, or what do you think this means?
I find it interesting when people say that he hasn't been given a lot of opportunities. He was at 2 Grand Prix finals as a junior man when I was there. I went to 2 Grand Prix finals with Roman. He's been given a lot of opportunities over the years, especially compared to somebody like Maddie Skizis. Roman may not have been at Worlds. He did World Team Trophy last year. Maddie didn't. I definitely don't see him as somebody who hasn't been given opportunities. So I'm a little bit surprised by people who say that. Any opportunity he hasn't been given, well, first, the one was taken away from him because Worlds was canceled. Okay. That's its own separate thing. But after that, he just didn't qualify for major events at Canadians. It's not like he wasn't given the opportunity. He just didn't qualify for them.
Chosen that year. Maybe
maybe he wasn't, but I'm just,
he wasn't.
He won nationals that season.
Yeah.
But nobody got Worlds that year. So like it's moot anyways, because nobody had it. Maybe he wasn't.
But it's interesting.
He's gone to 4 continents a couple times. Hasn't had much success there. He's had success at Grand Prix early in the season, Senior B's, Grand Prix. He won a medal at NHK. Just hasn't found his feet in competition. This is, if I put myself in Roman's shoes, who I don't know well, I don't know how he works. I don't know his training habits, how consistent he is in training. I don't know these things. But if I look at a skater that consistently struggles in competition, if I had one bad competition, I would go back to that drawing board and be like, okay, this is what we did. Okay, it didn't work. Erase it, start again. What are we going to do? So we've seen him struggle a lot in competitions over the years. And I have to wonder, how often does he go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, what I'm doing isn't working. Reset, restart.
If you do the same thing every time, how are you going to get a different result? 100%.
Yeah.
I always like when federations sort of trust young skaters and sort of give them an opportunity. But as you're saying, it sounds like they have, and they sort of have gotten their information back.
Roman as a junior made 2 junior Grand Prix finals. He's competed at a couple of junior worlds. He's been out internationally as a senior skater. When he wasn't given Grand Prix, he was going to Senior B's at Warsaw or wherever it was he was going. Skate Canada doesn't often send skaters to many Senior B's, but he was one who they would choose to send if they did send people. So I've never felt like Roman lacked opportunities, that's for sure.
So it's a return on investment question there.
I just feel like he hasn't seized the opportunities he's been given.
Got it.
Although I feel terrible for him having that skate, I just have to wonder how often after these rough skates does he go back to the drawing board and make major necessary changes? Yeah. I don't know.
If you know that there's a Russian tarot lady on Facebook, as she's known, and people talk about her, and that she had predicted that an up and coming man would win the gold medal for the men's event, and she hasn't been right on everything, I have to say, so far.
I don't know this person.
But I think it's just like, it's one of the funniest things of the season that there's a woman who does tarot cards, and she said that it would be an up and coming man, and everyone is like, which one is it going to be? Do you think it could be Yuma Kageyama? Could this woman on YouTube reading tarot cards be correct? And if so, is it Yuma Kageyama, Meagan? Is he enough of an up-and-comer?
He's the only person right now that I would say could be a direct threat to Nathan, having introduced the quad loop. His basic skating quality, the flow and the speed, he might not have the intricate choreography that a Shoma has. Shoma does 2-foot crosscuts his entire program, and he's done this for years. It's something that's kind of like driven me crazy, and I think it's one thing that's really prevented his scores from taking the next step in program components. So I see Yuma's basic flow and skating quality, as well as like those effortless quads that like come out of nowhere. I could see him challenging a Nathan if Nathan was to struggle. But Nathan would have to give an opportunity to somebody right now. In the short program with the quadlets triple toe in the second half, a quad flip earlier, if Nathan skates clean, math is math. It doesn't matter. Jason can still beat him in program components. Math is math, and nobody will beat Nathan if he delivers the content that he's planning. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I do think Yuma, is ready for a more interesting, memorable program. And I think that is one area where he's lacking, why I don't think he's ready to be the champion, is that I don't think he is choreographically memorable yet, or performance.
He's not yet, no. But I do think that as math can add up, he may do enough. And I love him. It just drives me crazy watching his smile program.
But that is part of the performance. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Does he know what they're singing about?
I don't know.
I always wonder.
Yeah.
But I love him.
You talked about how important skaters take the team event. And in dance, the politics of these competitions obviously matter more than in others. And I will just say that if there's one skater who told you how important every placement was in the ice dance event, it is Madison Hubbell, who has had everything written all over her face when it comes to Nikita Katsalapov and what that standing is in the ice dance event. She has been very clear that her dream was to have 2 Olympic gold medals coming in here, but they are definitely gunning to make up for 4 years ago. What's your take watching her and just the dance? And you talked about how we had both Chock and Bates and Hubbell and Donohue in that really boxed Mariah Bell out, or boxed a US lady out, because Nathan only did one. So what's your take on the dance and this upcoming showdown that's going to happen in an individual event?
Yeah, like part of me, as I was strategizing what people are going to do for the free skate, and it's nice to have an upset. So after day one, I was like really gunning for US to win this, surprisingly, because it was really unexpected that they were in first place after day one. And I was like, we know Hubbell can beat the Russians now. They have to use her in the free, because we know now that the judges will go there. But now we know the judges will go there for Chock and Bates too. So I didn't know that at the time, which is great. Could we be seeing 2 US dance teams on the podium and a Russian looking from the outside in? Not what I expected could happen. It's seeming like it may be possible. It may. So yeah, lots of like kind of surprising things coming out of this. I think that Gabby and Guillaume are going to enter that dance event pretty confident after what happened in that team event. It's their competition to lose. I think that now their confidence will be a little bit higher. But yeah, the rest of the places on the podium are going to be a little bit more surprising. Are we going to see 2 Americans on that podium? Judging by the team event, it's possible.
Yeah, I think
I'm so sorry. I'm going to be right back. Fear not. I'm coming back. But just keep talking about ice dance. I'm listening.
Well, my mom did say, we got the official text from Debbie Leese, and she said, I did not like the weird music of that ice dance team, the Martian and the astronaut. Not crazy about the program either. I know I shouldn't say that because they skated so great, but not my favorite. So, but yeah, I'm curious if with the dance, what we are going to see with this. We did see Piper and Paul maybe score a little bit lower than I thought. I don't think it helped them to skate after Hubbell and Donohue, but I noticed this at nationals. Whatever team goes after Hubbell and Donohue, they skate so freaking big on the ice that the next team looks less than in terms of skate order. So I do think that that's.
I mean, I really like Piper and Paul, and I really love their free dance. I love their packaging, their free dance. I like it. Like, I'm really drawn into that performance. I think that losing in the short dance to the Italians is not going to bode well for them moving forward. Of course, I hope that they prove me wrong and do really well and reach all their goals, but I'm a little bit more skeptical now than I was earlier. But things can change on a dime, like things can flip and change, as we know. Calls and mistakes can happen. So I think that the team event short program may have damaged them moving forward, but the dance event's not happening for almost a week, like a couple of days. Maybe there's time to kind of like recreate that magic.
And it is a different judging panel, or it is the same?
I have to double check that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the
technical
spot.
panel, judging panel, I'm not 100% certain. Technical panel will be the same. When I was in Sochi and Pyeongchang, the technical panel was the same in the team event to the pairs event, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
The judges will be different because they're drawn onto panels. And the short program and long program panel will be different in each event.
It was fascinating to really, because again, we've mentioned it can build momentum, but for Piper and Paul, I think it all but stopped it. Because I think there was a real question coming in, how the three North Americans were going to line up. And it was such a resounding, not Piper and Paul. And I enjoy Piper and Paul. I don't respond to these two programs as much as others, but it really seemed quite clear.
I kind of wondered after the short dance if a different Canadian team should do the free dance. So Piper and Paul could quietly work on those levels from the short dance and make whatever changes they needed. So I was a little bit surprised because Canada had the space to do another swap. So I was a little bit surprised to see that a swap was not made. But maybe Piper and Paul wanted to know what the panel was going to give them so that they can now go and make the necessary changes. This could be a benefit to them. But I did wonder after like just struggling just a bit with those levels in the short dance and coming behind the Italians, if doing the free dance was the right thing in the moment, or if maybe just quietly going to the practice rink and hammering out those levels was the better decision. I don't know. I'm again, somebody on the outside, but it's something I thought of.
I do have to say that my coach would kill me if I did not bring this up. And she says, you know, we watched meddling, all this bullshit about Russian mafia. I'll tell you about American mafia. I will say that these Olympics, we are having the Gabois mafia on the judging, most likely. If you look at the fact that the Gabois school has 11 different teams here from how many different countries, and you look at the different countries on the panel, I think that's why you are seeing that Nikita Katsalapov is not as much of a lock for the silver medal, perhaps, as people thought coming in.
If
I don't know the finer details of dance, but as I watched the team event, I sat back and was like, this is well judged. I really thought the team event was well judged in terms of the scores and the placement. I can't say I had a major issue with any of it.
And actually judging the elements and programs in front of them. This seemed less reputation. Like someone will say, oh, you just don't like Russia, so you want Russia down and you want America ahead. No, it's not true. It was based on the material alone and the skating skills alone. I never bought this idea that the Russians always had to be second. I never understood that.
Going to your comment about Gabois, if Nikita didn't have that deduction, they would have won yesterday. So
yeah,
I don't know how valid
it's
that
at least within the realm of possibility. I think that
Maybe.
we live in a sport where Russia has had so much power that often, no matter how we see when reputation is built, when certain skaters perform a certain way, they're getting, Trusova gets marks for components that are just not based on how the rules are written. And
did you see? And I love Trusova. Like to
love
me,
her too,
Cinderella program and personality really speaks to me, and I love it. But the ISU's training video where she is used for a 3.75 to a 4.5 per, program component score, or I don't know if
transitions. It was transitions
somewhere in the 3 to 4s. But she's given double that panels all the time, yet the ISU is teaching judges that this is what it should be scored. So to me, that was very, very interesting.
Yeah, and if you say that, your neck, the comments here, they will be, let me tell you,
I'm sure, and like bring it on to me, because I'm a big Trusova fan and I love her, but I love to watch her. A fact of what the ISU is using in a training model is not what's being reflective in the scores. And like there is no one behind Trusova wanting her to get the gold more than me. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see her nail 5 quads to that Corolla program and upset Kamila. I'd love it. It would be fun. It would be exciting. So, I mean, people can complain to me all they want, but I'm a huge fan of her. I just find it very interesting that the ISU's training model is using one thing and things are not happening like that.
I did hear that the Terry skaters have been doing run-throughs that would make Tara Lipinski go, wow, in Krasnoyarsk, that the number of run-throughs, maybe up to 5 for the free program.
That's why they're so consistent. Good for them.
Yeah. I cannot wait. But what's your take for prediction? Do you think that Sherbakova will rise again in the free based on how she's looked in practice? In terms of, I don't think rise to the gold, but perhaps rise to the silver.
Yeah, be enough. Like, I mean, it's going to take a lot of mistakes for them not to be 1, 2, 3. Like Trusova can fall on 3 quads and she can still easily be third. And I know I feel like it's Jonathan that you don't love Kaori as much as me. Have we had this discussion before?
Yeah, I like her from the waist down. Dave taught me to appreciate her skating skills from the waist down.
Yeah, which is perfectly fine. But like, I'm a huge Kaori fan. Like, she bombs around the ice. I would love to see a side-by-side video of both Kaori and Kamila coming around the ice, doing forward crossovers and showing their ice coverage and their power and their basic skating skills.
Well, so Meagan, what boxes show up when you're watching on CBC and stuff? Because when Dave and I will stream live on Peacock, they have almost this useless box that just has, as someone's referring to, like the Wordle colors with the red, yellow, and green. But then they don't put base value, I don't think, or they don't list the element.
They don't list the element, no, and it drove me crazy. They don't list the element, but they have the color, like the green, yellow, red. Okay,
and then occasionally they were putting up graphics and things that reminded me of Japanese nationals, where they mentioned on a particular jump how high, how long in the air, the distance, and I was like, this is the information we need to take the mystery out of skating skills. I saw it, and then the commentators didn't talk about it. Yeah, and it showed up missed opportunity, because that would have been an amazing thing to talk about, the height, power, and distance and speed that went into this. I do find Kaori often underscored. I thought she was amazing yesterday. Was she better than Kamila? No, but I do think that she could have been scored a little bit higher and it would have still been safe. Russia still would have been in first. But you know what I find interesting, and I do find this really fascinating, because last year at Worlds, I was like, so team Kaori, and I just love her, and I love her programs, and I love her passion that like oozes out of her as she skates. And I was talking to a Canadian judge who's an international judge at Worlds, at Olympics. And I was like, you would +5 that, right? And he gave me every valid reason why he wouldn't. And it was only a +3, and why her components, like he validated why her components were the way they were and made sense. And I was like, okay, like you made me understand that. I don't have to agree with you. I feel differently, but you're right. You're right.
I do agree that her components like are on a lot of crosscuts. However, if you're going to say that about Kaori, you have to look at Trusova, and then you have to look at the difference between how those two are scored. And I think that
I challenge you to count the crossovers in Trusova and Valieva, because you will be surprised that Valieva has more crossovers in her free skate. I saw a breakdown of this online, and yeah, Valieva hides those crossovers a lot more. With
how about the Valieva Lutz and Flip video that's going around showing how she rotates off of the ice on her jumps? Have you seen it? Or?
Yes, I did. Yeah. I mean, but we've all known this.
We've known this. I think it's more
nothing new, that it doesn't seem right now within the ISU rule book that this is something that they're going to deduct.
So we were talking the same exact short program as last year, just set to different music. If you see that side-by-side video, that is also really interesting.
I remember seeing a video of Yuzu's footwork from like 4 years ago on top of Yuzu's footwork from that season. This isn't recent, like this was last year or the year before. And it was the exact same footwork sequence, but it was a different program.
Kolyada does it from short.
It's really interesting how people do that.
Kolyada short and long every year. So same.
Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting that that's the case. I do think that if Anna will struggle, Kaori would be the next in line if she skates well to step up and maybe surprise. But I don't expect any of the Russian girls to struggle that much, to be honest.
No.
I did just want to give one thing as we wrap up about Beverly Zhou. And as we've all gotten older with social media and learned and things, my heart really breaks for her, because I did see that someone that was really struggling last night after an entire country attacked her on social media so much for, first of all, I think what people don't understand, obviously the people that are watching, is that the Chinese Skating Federation actually goes to other countries to recruit skaters to represent China because they wanted a team event medal. So someone like Beverly, it wasn't that she just tried to buy her way in, they asked her to come.
Right.
Yes.
And I think
and
that's
had a viable connection. I mean, and there's been backlash even on certain news outlets within the United States, like this sort of shaming, like shame on the American for trying to sneak her way into the, and it was like, whoa, where is this coming from?
No, you see this all the time in other sports. This is not unique at all.
No.
And she was chosen because she was the best female skater in China right now to represent them at the Olympics. So yes, she struggled in the short program, but it doesn't deserve any of the backlash that she would have been getting. She does not have any experience at this level whatsoever, being thrown into this and then to be treated the way that she was. Shame on all of those people. Shame on everybody who is treating her like that after a rough skate.
Yeah, now a goal of her life has become a trauma. And I think that's really terrible.
Yeah. I mean, for a moment after yesterday's free skate, I was like, she needs to pack up her bags and run home now.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Well, what was your moment of the team?
Chelsea Liu went to China at the same time as Beverly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chelsea came back.
Yeah.
And I just feel like if the situation is like that for Beverly in China, she should pack her bag and run.
Chelsea came back not the same. Not as consistent or as confident. So, what was your moment of the team event? I have to say, for me, obviously, seeing the dance upsets, I think individual performances, I think some MVPs, Shoma, Nathan, Maddie Skizis. I want to list many because they're across disciplines. People are gonna be like, how can you not say this person? Yuma, just really, Kamila's short, just fantastic skating. How about you, Jonathan?
I'm going to say Meagan with her daughter watching the Olympics, where she said she wanted to compete.
Did you see the videos today?
Yes, and then when she says hi to Bruno, because like Bruno turned and she's like, oh, hi, Papa, like, I love you. Like, it was amazing. I love that sort of like, it encapsulates so much of the Olympic spirit for me. I'm going to go with a nice Wakaba moment, because Wakaba was one of the people that embodied the smile and joy of being there when some people can't, because of the pressure or wherever they're coming from. So just to see someone so grateful to be there and have a lovely skate was really nice to see.
How about you, Meagan?
I mean, I'd say like, I'd mentioned 3 people, I think. Definitely the Japanese pair in their free skate to deliver like that. Not only to deliver the skate they did, to get a score like they did, and then to beat Peng and Jin so soundly. That's huge. That's huge for them. That's huge for their country and their progress. Yuma's free skate, for me, spectacular in another way. It didn't have that emotional moment and depth that I'm drawn to, but I was just like magnified by the ease in which these difficult elements are done. And then I'd say Maddie Skizis for like literally pulling Canada out of the dumpster after that short program. That's what it felt like. And I mean, I don't say that in a bad way. Everybody knows Canada was outside of the top 5 looking in after the short program. So not a position they wanted to be in. And Maddie pulled them out single-handedly and delivered in the short and the free skate the best on the Canadian team. So I think that she's really like taken herself to another level. And it was really exciting to see from a Canadian female.
She was a steel butterfly out there. It was really exciting. Well, we want to know, what were your moments of the team event? And we will catch back in with you during the Olympics. Thanks so much for watching. Golden Engine Sexy. Bye now.